This is a Canson pastel paper. Comes in a variety of colors, and it's a slightly textured paper. So when you put your pastel down, you're going to see some of the texture show through. And you can't put quite as many layers down as you can with some of the other types of paper. There's a definite limit to how many layers you can put on top before it's just not going to hold it anymore. We're already starting to lose it a little bit. And you can always see the texture through this. This is a similar paper, and this is Strathmore pastel paper, also a variety of colors. And this one has actually a little bit less texture than what we just used. It's a little bit smoother paper, so it holds even less layers of pastel. It's not going to give you quite as vibrant an appearance when you're done as some of your other choices. See, every time we blend it, it kind of smears right into the paper. The paper doesn't have much tooth to it. It can't hold a lot of pastel. This is Color Fix paper by Art Spectrum. And this has a sandpaper feel to it, and it will hold more layers of chalk. These different papers will give you a different experience with each one as far as using the pastels. Now this will hold the chalk a little better. It's got a tooth to it. It kind of grips the pastel. And you can put many more layers on this. There's a lot of different brands that have a similar texture to this. This one just happens to be Color Fix. This paper is called Kitty Wallace, or sometimes just known as Wallace pastel paper, and it also has that sandpaper feel. It's a little bit more coarse than the Color Fix. And this will hold a lot more layers. It's going on a little smoother right from the start. And it holds the pastel really nicely. This paper is a little more expensive, but it's a lot easier to work on, and you may like the results a lot better. Sometimes you seem to fight the pastel paper, and it makes it a lot harder than it needs to be when you're doing a piece. The paper can make a big difference as far as how hard or how easy it is to work on. So if you've tried pastel and you really don't like the results, try a different paper. Don't give up quite yet. Another type of paper is velour paper. And it actually has a feeling as if you were touching velvet or velour clothing. It's very soft to the touch. This is really good for portraits or animals. Not the best for still lifes. It doesn't hold that hard of an edge, but you can get some really soft features for a face, for example. And you can see it goes on very smooth. And each layer kind of blends the layer below it. You will have a little bit where you do with your fingers, but most of it is actually done with pastels. If you're going to do portraits or animals, I would really suggest giving this paper a try. And this is called Pastel Board, made by Ampersand, and it's an actual thick board, but it's got a texture to it. Not quite as textured as the Kitty Wallace, but you can put a lot of layers on this also. Here's our reference picture we're going to work from today, and I used a projector to draw it out, and I put it on color fixed paper, which comes in different colors. It has a little bit of a sandpaper feeling to it, so I'm using the side of a half a piece of dark brown, and I'm filling in the background, leaving the pumpkin in the basket and the gourd area clean. And underneath the pumpkin there's a black shadow. Now I'm coming in with black, a small piece of black, and I'm just putting the shadows in underneath. Everything still looks pretty rough. This is just my first layer, and Pastels is all about layering. The shadows in underneath the basket. And I'm using the edge of the black to give me a little bit of a cleaner line. And in my reference picture I have this corner is black. I'm going to stay pretty true to my reference picture. Now I've got a little bit of a lighter shade of brown, it's got a little bit of red to it, and I'm going over what I've already put down. Using my fingers here to smudge it in, to blend it into the paper, and your fingers will get pretty dirty with this. Now I don't want that black in the brown, so I'm going to use another finger. Use this finger to smudge this. I'm smudging the two brown colors together, and it makes quite a difference. I'm going to darken this black up again. Like I said, Pastels is all about layering. Smudge that in a little bit better. And there's a little bit of an edge here between this dark shadow and the background, and it looks a little bit red to me, so I've got a brown that's a little bit redder, and I'm going to come in with just a little bit of a lighter color, lighten that up a little bit more, and once again I'm going to smudge it. Now I'm coming in with a cream color pastel, and I'm putting in the areas of the background that I'm looking at my reference picture and they look a little bit lighter to me. I want a little bit of variety in my background. I don't want it just a solid color. So I'm coming in with this color and just laying it down where I see it. I also have a cloth on my lap that I'm constantly wiping my fingers on, so when I go in and smudge, I'm smudging with fairly clean fingers. And now I'm coming back in with the other brown again. Going over the background, but not the lighter colors I just put in. I have an air filter next to me, so it's collecting some of this pastel dust that you're seeing collect. I can blow it away as long as I have the air filter. I wouldn't want to do that without the air filter right next to me. Or you can give your piece a little tap and the dust particles should fall right off. Blending all the background in now. Now I'm going to work on the bottom here. I have a dark brown. And looking at my reference picture, I'm deciding where the black shadow should be and where this dark brown color should be. I have my black now, and I'm going back over this area that's pretty dark with the shadow from the pumpkin. And I'm using the edge of the pastel again to get a really clean line near the pumpkin and near the edge of the basket. And now this is the same brown that I used in the background color. I'm going to use it in the foreground. Just gives me a little bit of unity. If I was doing a landscape, I would probably use a different color in the foreground, something with a little bit more yellow in it, a little bit warmer. But the background and the foreground in this picture are actually pretty close together. And with the dark green, being careful on the edges, I want to keep it pretty clean. I'm filling in the stem of this pumpkin. I'm going to do the whole stem, even though there's quite a variety of colors in this stem. I'm going to start out with one solid color. Now I'm coming in with the white, and I'm just going to define some of this pumpkin stem a little bit. Just put in some of the areas that I see are ridges and are a little bit lighter. And I'm using the edge of my pastel. If you need a sharp edge, you can either sand the pastel on a piece of sandpaper, that'll give you a sharp edge, or you can actually break the pastel, and then you end up with a sharp edge on both pieces. And most of these ridges that are going down, they're not straight down, they're kind of wavy and bumpy. Got a dark brown, putting in some of the shadows in the stem, and I flip the pastel over to get a little bit sharper edge. And now going in with black and doing the same thing, just putting in a little bit of the shadow. The stem is starting to take shape. And I have a smudger here, and it's basically it's like paper fibers rolled up, and both ends come to a point. You want to make sure that it's clean, that you've wiped it off or sanded it down before you use it. And instead of using my fingers on these small areas, I'll use the smudger. Coming back in with a little bit more of the black. I want these shadows a little bit darker. And again with the smudger. A little bit more black. And back in with my white. Really make these ridges look like they're popping up. Now I got a little bit of the stem color into the background, so I'm taking my brown and I'm just cleaning it up. There's lots of times in a pastel painting you're going to go back and forth like that. And at the bottom of the stem I'm seeing a little bit of orange that's reflecting into the stem, so I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to use the same orange, and I'm going to start filling in my pumpkin. And I'm just going to use this for the lighter parts of the pumpkin. The pumpkin actually, there's an area that's quite shadowed, and I'm going to use a different color for that area. And this edge has caught some of the background color in, and it's showing through at the moment, but as we go, other layers will cover it a little better. So that's the lighter area. Now I've got slightly more orange. What I put down was a little bit more yellow. This is a little bit more orange, and I'm putting in the areas that go between the shadow and the light color. And this spot looks a little bit less shadowed. And under here, there's an area of the pumpkin that's not catching all of the shadow. Now with this reddish brown, I'm going to put in a little bit of the shadow that's caused by the stem. And I'm going to start putting my ridges in. The pumpkin still looks really rough at this point. Looking back at my reference pictures, and I'm just deciding where the shadows are and where the ridges are. I'm going to use this color to start my shadow color. The pumpkin's starting to take shape. I've got a cream color, and I'm starting to put in some of the lighter areas. And even without using my fingers, putting in another color of pastel is starting to blend it a little bit. A little bit more over here. And on the edge of the ridges there's a highlight. And going back in with my orange color. And we're going to darken these shadows up a little bit. And with just a little bit of black, I'm going to go over the shadows a little bit more. Now I'm putting in the really dark areas of the pumpkin. This is a dark brown. And the ridges are a little bit curvy, a little bit bumpy. There's a randomness to nature that you need to look for and put in. Now I've got the reddish brown and just touching up a few areas. And back to my orange. Just back and forth between the different colors, seeing where I need what color. And again, using this color is actually smudging the colors together. And back in with my stick. I want to soften these shadows up just a little bit. And as I'm doing this, I can see the pumpkin start to actually take shape. And I'm going to put my white highlights in. Again, along the edge of the ridges, you're going to see a highlight. Part of the ridge is in shadow and part of the ridge is in highlight. And I love putting highlights in. I think it really makes an object pop. And I'm deepening up these shadows a little bit. You want a really nice blend of dark areas and light areas. Some contrast. And with a reddish brown, I'm going to extend the bottom of this pumpkin a little bit. I think I lost the edge just a little bit. That's a little better. Now I have a cream color and I'm going to start working on the basket. Just fill in this top edge. All the same color to begin with. And now with a little bit darker, I'm going to start giving this side a little bit of a shadow. And a little bit of a brown, darker still, to fill in the shadow. And with the black, I'm going to put in these edges, these shadows that I'm seeing from an overlap in the basket. Now I have a reddish brown and I'm going to the inside of the basket. That's just my first layer. The inside of this basket isn't really that reddish brown color, but that's just what I chose to start with. And I'm going to change it up with a little bit more brown. I have a pastel pencil here. Gives me a little bit more of a sharper edge. And under here it is really dark. That's just really in shadow. Lighten one side up just a little bit. And darken the other side up. And now I'm going to put the shadow in over here. And it goes to a little bit lighter still. And this edge is definitely the lightest. And then by layering the different colors, I've got my lighter side on the left blending right into my darker side on the right. Clean that edge a little bit and then clean the bottom of it a little bit. Now for the weave of the basket, I'm going to lay in some of my basic shadows to start. Gives me a little bit better idea of where each piece is and how the weave goes. And then I'm going to handle each little section as if it was a separate object. I'm going to put the main color in each piece, and then I'm going to put in my shadows and my highlights, and then I'm going to move on to the next piece. Now I may move back and forth a little bit if I see that I missed something or an area needs to be darker, but by handling it as if each piece that I'm seeing is a separate object, each one becomes very distinct and it really gives it some character. And I'm going to speed the video up a little bit just so that you get the idea of what I'm doing. And again, the right side is a lot darker and we actually lose the weave into the shadow. Go back in with this lighter color to keep the edge. And I'm not showing you every little piece that I put in here, but you get the idea. And you do each gourd the same way you did the pumpkin. I'm not going to go through it all and explain every single thing because I've already explained it in the pumpkin. So I'm just going to show you a sped up version of this. And you're just layering the colors down. You're looking back at your reference picture and you're smudging it in between with your fingers or with a smudger. And I work each gourd separately. I finish each one before I move on to the next one, and I try to keep it clean in between the gourds so that they don't smear into each other. Just make sure you have some nice deep shadows and some nice shiny highlights, and don't forget to keep looking back at your reference picture, and just sit back and enjoy watching the rest of this in fast motion. And if you have any questions on any of it, just drop me an email.
much to say.